Hello, everyone. We're just waiting for 7 o'clock to kick in, and then we'll be starting off our special council meeting. If I can ask, just again, as per usual, it's been a while since we've done this, that the staff turn off their video and the councilors turn on their video, so we can help the meeting move smoothly, and I get people's faces at the top of the screen where I need to see them and see hands raised, etc. Okay, it's we're just waiting for a couple more councilors to turn on their video or join us, and then we'll kick off the meeting. We now have all of the councilors in the room. Ms. Williams, are we good to go from the staff perspective? We are. So, and recording has started and our streaming has started, I understand. So I'm ready to call the meeting to order. This is a special council meeting for Tuesday, September 21st. As we do with all of our meetings, I just want to acknowledge that the lands in which we're gathered is the traditional territories of the Coast and the Strait Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize the Lekwungen speaking people known today as the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations, and recognize that their connection to these lands continues to this day. I also just want to make a note that next week we'll be celebrating Orange Shirt Week, and of course the September 30th is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and we'll have more to say on that next week, but I just want to remind people to put in your calendars and set aside some time to recognize and to learn on that day. So now that we're in order, can we have an agenda in front of us for the special council meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Is there any discussions on the agenda? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Move on to mayor's remarks. I'm going to just remind people we do have as we sort of combined the committee of the whole and our council meeting into one meeting. We're a bit compressed because of Union of BC Municipalities meeting. We do have a public input portion of this meeting. And so if anybody wishes to call in, the phone numbers or the Zoom meeting process is there. So you can just make sure if you want to call in or join on Zoom that you do so at this time, and then I'll make that call after this. But sometimes it takes people a couple of minutes to make the call. So I thought I'd give a heads up at this point. So welcome back, all the members of council, members of staff. We're a bit of a hybrid. I'm in the chambers here, which is nice to be back in here. The plurality of the council is still at home, but we are working hard to get back into these chambers. It's nice to see staff's face here. We did have a summer break, and we've also been at the Union of BC Municipalities, or UBCM meeting, all of last week. And for those who aren't aware, that is a meeting where councils from all over the province get together we did it virtually this year to discuss issues, learn, and make resolutions that help set policy, makes asks of and make suggestions to the province in terms of how we can improve municipal governance, municipal activities, and work closer together with the province and the federal government. So a lot of good work happened, but it's nice to be back here at our local table. Just want to say I would like to thank the residents of Oak Bay in following public health orders over the last 18 months. We're still in this. I think we were hoping we'd be free by now, but here we are in the fourth wave, still in a very positive place. Really thankful Oak Bay at over 90% now of secondary of two vaccinations, really at the leading of the world at this point in terms of that. And it's really appreciate that of the members, but also more than that, just being respectful and kind on the streets and wearing masks when it's appropriate, and being understanding of people who may have different opinions and things as well. So keep it up. Hopefully this will be over sooner rather than later, but very much appreciate you being here. Thank you for putting up the call and things. I also just want to acknowledge that over the summer months, councils had a bit of a break, although we continue to work on committees. The staff have also been working hard to move forward the council priorities, and I want to just thank them for that work that's been going on. keeping our operations fully functional, even improving them despite all of the added workload that comes from accommodating the public health orders as they've come in. This fall, I'm not sure if we're going to be appreciative, as we're going to have a lot of work on our plates as we review the work that's been done by staff and making recommendations forward. But certainly looking forward to that. Everything from asset management, housing, a lot of big council initiatives are coming back for discussion this fall, and certainly looking forward to hearing from the public in that to help inform our decision making as well. It's nice to have so much meaningful work to do in the coming months, but we have work to do tonight as well. So welcome back, welcome to the fall, and we will look forward to working together going forward. Item 4 on the agenda is public comment and question period. And we have the option here for people, if they wish to speak, you can, if they call in, you can hit *9 to raise your hand, and that pops you to my screen here that I can see you, and we can accommodate you in this meeting, either within the Zoom or by phone. So you can call the 1-855 number that's listed, or if you're in Zoom, you can just raise your hand. The raise hand option is just under the reactions tab at the bottom of the screen in front of you there. So if you click reactions, raise hand, then that raises your hand to speak. And I'll give a minute or two here just in case anybody from the public wishes to address council at this time. I always feel like we should have a Jeopardy theme music pop in at this point so that people know that we're waiting. There's time is passing. But one of the reasons I gave that notice at the beginning of the mayor's remarks is that sometimes it takes people a minute to call or to raise their hand. I am not seeing any hands raised or call-ins at this point. However, so I'm going to move forward with the agenda. If something pops up in the next minute or two, I'm happy to go back to this agenda item to accommodate. We always want to have that opportunity for people. Councillor Zelka, you are also a member of the public.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a point of information, since there was a recent change to an intersection in Southern Oak Bay, I don't know whether you wanted as part of your comments, and I probably should have warned you ahead of time, whether you wanted to use this opportunity to let people know of this change at McNeil and Foul Bay.
Sure, Councillor Zelka, I can maybe touch on that next week, but I think anybody who regularly uses the McNeil corridor is very aware of the fact that the wall has gone up there and is and vehicle traffic, motorized vehicle traffic is being routed around down Foul Bay Road at that point. So yes, if they don't know already, they certainly will the first time they use it at this point. So thank you for raising that. Anything? So I don't have any other members of the public who have flagged. I'm just going to look to Ms. Williams here in the room. Is there any other? No, not missing anything on my end. So we'll move on to special meeting matters. Item number 5. Sorry, I didn't change my printout. Item number 5 on section number 5 of special meeting matters. We have 5.1, and we have our Mr. Payne, who is our Director of Financial Services, who will here to introduce the grant and aid request from the Business Improvement Association. Welcome, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mayor and Council. On August 6th, the district received a grant and aid application from the Oak Bay Business Improvement Association. As Council was on break at the time, this is the first opportunity for staff to bring that forward for Council consideration. The grant request is for $3,000, and it would be utilized to support the Music in the Village pilot project, which occurred throughout the summer. Should Council choose to support the grant request, there will be $7,000 remaining in the discretionary grant and aid budget thereafter. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Payne. And I'll go back to this table. Are there any questions of staff on this item? Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
I'd just like to move the motion, please.
Sure, I'll take the motion as our seconder. Moved and seconded. We can have now either questions or comments at this point. Councillor Zelka.
Thank you. I have a question for staff. I appreciate option 3, where we could consider a different amount. I very much value this organization. Is it possible we could give them more money than they're asking for?
Mr. Payne, is there any benefit to us changing the amount upwards for the use this year?
Your Worship, to answer the question directly, yes. I could only speculate what those additional funds would be used for. And whether there's any additional benefit to the district is sort of a matter of opinion.
Yes, fair enough. Thank you. My understanding from the Business Improvement Association contact was that they should have allocated this amount because they had so many weekends of music they wanted to fill, and they pay people at this rate, and that was kind of how they came up with the number. So
Okay.
I don't know that they would add any additional. I think they should have had the number of weeks in the months that they wanted to cover, and that was the amount that helped them out with that amount.
Oh.
So I don't know there'd be a direct benefit outside of, maybe extending it a bit longer or something if they wish to do so.
Mm.
Well, let me just allow me to simply say it was a delight on this weekend to bump into another installment of the music in the village along Oak Bay Avenue, and I definitely support what this organization is doing. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Braithwaite, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that I think you're correct, Mayor, that they have allocated the weekends that they were looking for. I think what I might suggest is that if they feel that they needed to or wanted to extend this into the Christmas season, that perhaps they would come back and ask for another grant at another time. And I would agree with Councillor Zelka that it's been a lovely addition to the avenue, and so kudos to the BIA for putting this on, and to Heather Leary for driving it.
Thanks, Councillor Braithwaite. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Sorry, I was having trouble with the mute button. Yes, I would like to echo those comments as well. It's been a really refreshing, change on the avenue. It's attracted more people, I think, and not large crowds. Just a few people standing by and listening, or walking slowly and listening. It's been really good. So kudos, as Councillor Braithwaite pointed out, to the BIA. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I don't see any other hands up on this one, so I will call. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you. I just noted in the application, it said that the BIA believes in the 1980s. I believe in that decade as well. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'm not sure what that refers to. I don't have the piece in front of me here, but I'll take it as a joke. Sounds like that's as intended. All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. We now have the item number 5.2, which is Ms. Morden, who is amendment to the animal control and ticket information utilization. Ms. Morden, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Everyone can hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. So the purpose of this report is to introduce two bylaw amendments for consideration of first three readings. The first is an amendment to the animal control bylaw, and the second is a corresponding amendment to the ticket information utilization bylaw. Both bylaws were originally initiated following Ms. Winter's report to the district on managing urban wildlife, though some modifications were made to specific content based on subsequent consultation with provincial staff and legal advisors. And of course, this work is all being undertaken in advance of the more comprehensive review of animal control bylaws scheduled for 2023. So just a couple more things to mention. I did want to highlight that staff had incorporated a couple of changes, excuse me, based on input provided from the Victoria Animal Control Services. And that included adding payment of any veterinary costs, including incurred during impoundment of domestic animals, to the conditions for release of the animal, and expanding and updating the provision related to confinement of animals in an enclosed space. As well, in accordance with Council's direction at the July 12th, 2021 Council meeting, staff included a provision to address the outstanding direction of Council, I believe from 2019, to restrict dogs from being on South Willows Beach all year round. In addition to the proposed amendment bylaws, the staff report also highlights a potential opportunity to work with Environment and Climate Change Canada staff on the installation of additional educational signage at Oak Bay beaches to raise awareness around the migratory bird sanctuary, including dog-related considerations and restrictions. And staff are just requesting Council direction on that particular aspect of the report as well. So with that, Your Worship, I'll turn it back to you and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Morden. And yeah, happy to take questions of Council at this time. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you. Oh, sorry, I should have come to the meeting in person. I'm thinking now. Thank you very much. First of all, this is a terrific report. I'm very grateful to both Ms. Winter at the time and certainly Ms. Morden for their excellent work. And as the mayor knows, and all of us know, this has been a really large body of work, but it has tremendous implications for how we treat animals and wildlife in Oak Bay. I just have a few questions, and they were questions that were posed by members of the public to me, including the UWSS. And that was on page 2 of 32 of the staff report under the third bullet, which talks about traps related to bylaw 4013. And it's the paragraph that begins with encourage property owners who feel that they have exhausted deterrence and mitigation strategies and are seeking to resolve issues with Schedule B wildlife through trapping as a final resort to seek trappers who take a humane approach. One of the suggestions was, and I don't know if this is possible, if we could more specifically define what we mean by humane, because it is largely open to interpretation and wide ranging. And one of the ways to do that would be to perhaps mention SPCA guidelines, something like that. And also for residents who have sought, who have exhausted all options, would it be possible to add a clause that people must return to council? As we do with trees, we would do the same with wildlife. They would return to council in order to seek trappers to, as a last resort, to trap and remove the animals. So those were questions from residents, and UWSS has also offered to assist the municipality in creating the urban wildlife management section on the district website. They were happy to do that. So those are the only comments and or questions. One more, sorry, on box traps. I know the province just brought in legislation around the use of rodenticide. How would that impact the use of box traps now in Oak Bay? I know that the municipality has adopted non-poisonous means of dealing with rats and mice and so on. But I'm just wondering if the provincial legislation has an impact on this section of the bylaw referring to box traps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. A series of questions there, so we'll go to Ms. Morden. Ms. Morden, did you capture those?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think mainly I was just sort of taking notes on the comments that Councillor Green began with, and I think probably the approach that I would suggest there is that I can return and consult with Ms. Winter to review the content that's been added to the website. Well, actually with Ms. Goodgrove as well. Review the content that's been added to date and see if there's any gaps and if we can add some additional information around what we mean by a humane approach and the SPCA guidelines. So just provide a little bit more content there and information to the public. And then around the specific of box traps, I would have to get back to you on that. I'm not completely sure if there would be any implications there. Certainly none in terms of the types of traps that through this amendment bylaw council is proposing to prohibit. I don't see any implications immediately, but we could certainly look into the use of box traps. And I assume maybe you're referencing baiting within the use of box traps. Is that fair?
Councillor Green, you're unmuted.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Ms. Morden. That's correct. Through you, Mayor. I think the question was, we adopted an anti-rodenticide policy in the municipality of Oak Bay, but the public had not been captured in that because we couldn't do that. And now the province, I believe, and I haven't seen the legislation, but I understand they have enacted legislation on banning the use of rodenticide. So I just wondered how that might impact box traps that are designed to trap or deal with rodents, mice and rats more specifically. But that may be a question for a later time. And I don't want that question to interrupt what we're trying to do tonight with this particular amendment process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I feel like there was one aspect of the question that I wasn't clear it was answered, which is including a definition of humane within the bylaw. And
Yes,
so I'm just going to put
sorry.
that to Ms. Morden if that's a rational place to put it, or if there's other ways of managing that.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I missed that. Thank you.
No, thank you. Ms. Morden?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think my suggestion at this point would be not to include that in the bylaw necessarily. I think I would take that as direction to staff to look into that a little bit. There may be some standards that are available and well known, throughout Canada and possibly beyond, that we could simply share that information through our website as opposed to including it in a bylaw. So that would be my suggestion for now. If you leave it with staff, we could look into that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I have Councillor Patterson and then Councillor Zelka.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to staff. Just on the additional considerations, I support the staff recommendations for these changes to bylaws. Under the additional considerations that was recommended, cost recovery for veterinary costs, and perhaps could staff just shed some light on, is that a significant amount for the district annually, or is this just so that we have some cohesion under this bylaw, but does it really affect our budget process in any way? I don't remember seeing this in any of the financial, but it's not that detailed in the breakdown. So it's just curiosity as to, are these significant costs for the district or not?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Patterson. Ms. Morden, do we have any information, or Mr. Payne if you don't?
Thank you, Your Worship. I might actually defer to Mr. Payne. I will say my sense is it wasn't significant. This was just when I touched base with Victoria Animal Control Services and said, do you have any amendments that you would consider higher priority that we might want to capture in advance of the more comprehensive bylaw review? This is just one that they flagged as something that they said we just might want to consider in advance. But Mr. Payne, can I confirm whether or not that amount would be significant on an annual basis?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Morden. Mr. Payne, are you able to answer that question?
Yes, Your Worship. We don't expect it to impact the financial plan. We believe that the budget for animal control services and enforcement of animal control services is reasonably flexible. It's got a built-in a static contract amount plus an additional estimated amount for the variable services that may occur. So we don't believe this would be a variable service. We don't believe that would cause us to exceed or change our financial plan budget. Thank you, Mr. Payne. Go ahead, Councilor Patterson.
Yeah, thank you for that information. Then with that information, then, I think that this is an item that could wait until the bylaw is under total review. I don't think it's that important that it be included in the provisions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair. Comment and a question. First comment is sincere thanks to Councillor Green and to staff for bringing this forward. Very much appreciate this attempt to drag this particular bylaw into the 21st century and all of the expectations that we have in the public's eye. So again, thank you. A question to staff relating to page 2, analysis section, first paragraph. It makes reference to a proposed amendment around resolution 2021-175 relating to ensuring that Indigenous rights are clearly respected. I see things like authorized by permit, and I see other officer, but I don't quite understand how this clearly ensures that Indigenous rights are respected. Could staff or someone please explain?
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Ms. Morden.
Sure. Oh, just sorry. I thought I might be on mute, but I am not. Okay. Thank you for the question, Councillor Zelka. That is enshrined primarily within section 4 of the amendment bylaw, which refers to section 19.2 of the animal control bylaw. And that is no person shall use a trap to restrain an animal other than mice or rats unless authorized by permit. If you continue down to the end of that particular provision, it also references or exercising traditional Indigenous rights. Now, having said that, I did catch up with Ms. Binder today. She did confirm under the BC Wildlife Act, Indigenous peoples who are BC residents do not need to hold any type of hunting license. While they are exercising their Aboriginal right to hunt for sustenance purposes within a traditionally used area, they are still required to comply with hunting regulations related to public health and safety. So we did work with provincial staff on the wording of section 19.2 and 19.3, and there was no indication that the prohibition as it's worded, so the particularly around the body grabbing traps versus a box or cage trap or nets, that would interfere with or impinge on First Nations traditional methods of hunting or trapping in any way. Does that help?
That is very helpful, staff. Or sorry, Chair, if I may continue.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I very much appreciate you pointing out the reference to the reference, and that helps a lot. So let me go back to the actual wording then on page 2, just since that's the actual resolution. Authorized by permit. Who is authorizing the permit, and where do you get that permit from?
Ms. Morgan.
Thank you, Your Worship. So that is the resolution that, when we went back and worked with the province on what does that look like in a bylaw, that's the piece that now looks a little bit different in the actual amendment bylaw. So that where we got to with provincial staff was within that section 4 in the amendment bylaw. So I know that resolution is sitting there, but through consultation, it morphed a little bit. And so the wording that we're using for the amendment bylaw is within section 4 of the amendment bylaw.
I'm looking at section 4 and I don't see it of the amendment bylaw. Amendment to the animal control bylaw 4797?
Yeah.
Down on
so
page
it says,
6?
Yes, sorry, page 6 of 32.
Yes.
Where it says renumber the current section 19, that particular section. So under section 4, the 2 changes are to 19.2 and 19.3 of the animal control bylaw. That is the real substance of what we came up with in consultation with the province around Indigenous hunting and trapping rights.
Okay, so specifically the permit is issued by the province of BC. It's not something that we will be creating a bureaucracy around. I just wanted to absolutely confirm that.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Absolutely correct. Yes.
Thank you. If I may, last question on relating on back to page 2, and maybe you capture this. It talks about conservation officer or other officer. Is that now irrelevant? The concept of another officer.
Ms. Morden.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah. So possibly a little irrelevant. Just the wordings just changed slightly based on that consultation with the province. So the wording that we've landed on is in particular the new section 19.2. So the one that begins, no person shall use a trap to restrain an animal other than mice and rats, unless authorized by permit issued by the province or by authority as a duly authorized officer of the federal or provincial government or the District of Oak Bay. So a little more all-encompassing there in terms of the language that we're using. So it did change a little bit. Yeah.
Great. Okay, that is very, very helpful. And if I may ask one more question, please.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess maybe it's a comment. I just want to echo previous councillors' suggestion to include somehow include the UWSS, maybe on the creation of that urban wildlife management section on the district website. I'm sure staff it's in good hands, but we have such amazing expertise throughout the province, throughout this district, that I would also encourage a reach out of some sort, or at least some consideration for their input. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. I'm just looking to get clarification just on the specific definition of trap. Just referring back to the report makes reference to the resolutions that that council have provided to staff in terms of direction for amendments. just at the top of page 2, there's a definition, direction to add a new definition of trap to Bylaw 4013 as follows, which lays out a fairly detailed definition of what trap means. But if I refer to the proposed amendment Bylaw 4797, section 1 refers to a new definition of trap is added, which basically just trap in this bylaw shall have its ordinary meaning, but shall not include common mice and rat traps. The resolution at the council level was to include a more detailed and more expansive definition of trap. So I'm just wondering how we square those two things up, because as I understand it, the intent was to eliminate or control the use of leg hold and those devices which cause undue distress to the animal, that basically the leg hold traps and those traps which are of great concern, but to retain the use of certain types of traps in the definition that was provided in council direction specifically excludes different types of traps. It shall not be considered a trap for the purposes of this bylaw. So I'm just wondering how we square up the motion made at the council level with the definition of trap that's included in the amendment bylaw.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Appleton. Ms. Morden, this was your journey to get us from where we were given direction to where we ended up.
Thank
Perhaps
you,
you can give that overview.
Sure, absolutely. And through you to Councillor Appleton, the legal advice that we received when we were reviewing the bylaw was that we were perhaps overcomplicating things with that definition. It did come from a review of definitions used in other communities. However, when we put it through our own legal advisors, they said they advised us to go with something much simpler, and then you layer on your prohibition of the traps that you wish to not have used in the community. So they said that that approach would allow for specific types of traps to change over time if we, pardon the pun, box ourselves in on a definition, and then types of traps change and don't fit our definition anymore, that could become problematic over time. So it just allows the specific types of traps to change. It's clear about what we are not including in that definition, so common rat and mouse traps. And then you layer on your very clear prohibition, so that within that section 4 again of the amending bylaw, the new section 19.3 in the animal control bylaw is where we say specifically a person must not use, set, or maintain any trap that's designed to capture an animal by the foot, leg, or neck. So it was really those body grabbing traps that were the issue. Through this, types of traps that would still be able to be used through permit or however someone would be authorized to use them is the box traps, cage traps, and nets, for example. So they don't fall into that category of the types of traps that capture an animal by a body part, which was really seemed to be the crux of the concern.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just as a follow-up to that, but section, and through you to staff, and I appreciate that, section 19.2 does specifically say that no person shall use a trap to restrain an animal other than mice or rats. And then 19.3 then modifies section 19.2, saying, so it gives us further definition of trap, but 19.2 lays out that no person shall trap or restrain an animal without, unless authorized by permit. So that would seem to restrict landowners from setting any trap of any kind on their property without a permit. Do I have that right?
Ms. Morden?
Without a permit or as otherwise authorized through that section, so through traditional Indigenous rights, or if you're an authorized officer, correct. So you wouldn't be setting traps at all. And then if you are authorized to set a trap, you're still subject to the fact that you can't, this prohibition on traps that are designed to capture an animal by the foot, leg, or neck, are still not, they wouldn't even be authorized even if you have a permit. So that's the type of traps that you would want to prohibit no matter what.
Sorry, just if I may follow up on clarification for that. you said no traps, but the mouse and rat traps are still
Sorry,
excluded. correct?
yes.
Okay. Just want
Those
to make
are
sure that we're all
allowed, yes,
on the same
yeah.
line here. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just finally to wrap this up. So essentially, you know, in the process of creating a prohibition that seems to be broadly supported, obviously, for prohibiting traps designed to capture an animal by the foot, leg, or neck, we're now prohibiting prohibiting residents from setting any type of trap, is essentially what we're saying, with the limitation of rat and mouse traps as defined in the bylaw, which represents that is not just a change in the types of traps being prohibited, but a change in citizens' ability to trap wildlife on their property. That is an extension of the previous bylaw. Do I have that right?
Ms. Morton,
Yes, that's correct.
could you clarify that extension just for my benefit, Ms. Morton? What was allowed before and what has changed within this current bylaw in terms of the what a homeowner could do previously and what they can do now?
Sure. So interestingly, in the bylaw as it existed prior to this amendment, shall it be approved, it really didn't address traps. There is an animal trap prohibition bylaw that we located from 1990. I apologize, I don't have it in front of me at this time, but I can say it was very dated and it really didn't I guess espouse the conversation that's happened at council more recently. So I'm totally going on memory here, and it was before summertime. But when I actually pulled it up, it is from many years past, and it certainly did not reflect the conversation that council has had more recently, and particularly around and stemming from Ms. Winder's report.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Appleton?
No, thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, go back to you, Councillor Zelka, for a second time.
Yes, thank you very much. It appears that with this new bylaw, raccoons are now off the table with respect to trapping. Let me just at least confirm that assumption to start.
Ms. Morton?
Yes. So if we under section 4 again in the 19.2, now no person could use a trap to restrain an animal well, I won't go through it again, but unless authorized by permit or by an authority, a duly authorized officer. So you're correct. A resident could not go and set a trap without one of those permits in place, unless it was for mice or rats.
So the question then is, since we have a fair number of raccoons throughout Oak Bay, Schedule B wildlife under the Wildlife Act, is an Oak Bay resident to call, I guess, a pest control company, which I presume would have one of these permits to deal with the issue? Is that what we would be assuming and advising residents to do going forward?
Ms. Morton?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so we've added information about that to our website in terms of the steps that they would take, whether they're a tenant or a landowner. There has been lots of information added there. I'll certainly be reviewing it once again using Councillor Green's notes from earlier this evening. So that's where we've laid out the steps that you would take, who you would call, all the details around that. I certainly haven't looked at it in a few weeks, so I will be going back to refresh on it as well.
Okay. And if I may, the last question I've got is, with raccoons being scheduled under the Wildlife Act, is there a provincial, I guess, overrule with respect to how these animals in particular can be dealt with and disposed of that would supersede some aspects of what we're trying to do within our bylaw?
Ms. Morton?
Thank you, Worship. It's always possible that the province could do something that might supersede our bylaws, so I wouldn't want to say no to that. At this time, there's nothing current, to my knowledge, that would impact it. And what's that, sorry?
Oh, no, we just had
I'm getting some
somebody
audio feedback there.
Mr. Meikle, your microphone has become
up,
unmuted. If you could maybe just remute your microphone.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Go ahead, Ms. Morton.
Sorry, you can hear me. Okay, thank you. Yeah, as I was saying, if something were to come into play, it's always possible. But we would keep an eye out for that to occur. That's probably the best answer I can give you right now.
Thank you so very much, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to ask these questions. And thanks to staff. Excellent work.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. I don't see any other questions, so I'm happy to take any motion that Councillor sees fit. We have a recommendation here with some options attached as well for other pieces. Turn to you, councillors. What is your will? Councillor Green? You're just, yeah.
I'm
there we go.
sorry.
Yes.
I would be happy to make a motion supporting the staff recommendation for 3 readings. And I guess we go 1 reading at a time.
Yeah, we'll do 1 reading at a time is the simplest things. So maybe we just move the receipt of the report first and then we'll do the readings. So we move the receipt first. Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? Why don't you move first reading, Councillor Green, and then we can have, normally we don't do discussion, but if there's any modifications people wish to make, this would be an appropriate time. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move first reading of the amendments to the animal control bylaw as laid out in the report. Thank you.
I see a hand for seconded, so that's moved and seconded. Any discussion on that or changes? Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just structurally, as a point of procedure here, I would like to ask whether or not it would be possible to debate certain sections of the amendment bylaw separately, because I am not in support of the trapping components of the amendment bylaw, but I do support this the section 7 of the amendment bylaw, which speaks to the restriction of dogs from South Willows Beach. So these being 2 separate topics, I find it problematic because I'm not in support of some of the components of the amendment bylaw, but I am in support of others. So I'm just wondering structurally how we might handle that.
Sure. The simplest way I can think of, and I'll turn to staff if I'm off on this, being a little rusty after some time away. I think the simplest way would be to move an amendment to make any change to the bylaw that you saw fit, and then if that is moved and seconded, we can debate that amendment. We can then, if it passes, we would then move second reading as amended. So that would be procedurally the simplest way of going through the process. If you want something more structural, then I'll take, maybe it would be helpful if I understood sort of some of what you're trying to do, but if you can work it within that framework of through an amendment process, it's probably the simplest to manage.
Very well, Your Worship. Then I would propose an amendment to the amendment bylaw to amend the definition of trap as laid out in bylaw 4797, section 1, to amend that definition to the definition of trap used in Council Resolution 2021-174, which goes on to read, as per section 2 of the staff report, a device or trap that grips a mammal's body or body part, continuing on to shall not be considered a trap for the purposes of this bylaw. So I am proposing to amend the definition currently presented in Amendment Bylaw 4797 with the language provided in Resolution 2021-174 as laid out in the staff report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Appleton. Thank you for being clear on that process. And I think it's fairly clear what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to leave just a restriction to the single type of trap, essentially, of the body or leg holding mechanism that would be regulated under this bylaw. Is that a fair?
The reason, thank you, Your Worship, the reason that I'm seeking the change is that the bylaw, when my understanding of the discussion around the subject at the council table was that the specific purpose of defining certain types of traps was to specifically exclude leg hold traps and those traps deemed inhumane, which is something that I completely support, but to leave open the usage of other traps which still have potential use and function to residents. Restricting the definition of trap in the way that's currently presented in the amendment bylaw, in my opinion, represents a further restriction than what was originally debated.
Okay, thank you. I've just and it's just helpful to have a little bit of clarity of what is going on there. We really, by process, should have a seconder before we get into any kind of debate on the motion. So the motion you've laid out there to remove that portion of it. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Appreciate that. Is there anything else you wish to add, Councillor Appleton? I'm gonna, before I go too far down this path, I really hate sort of doing too much shifting of bylaws language on the fly unless it's something very straightforward. So I'd probably, ultimately, if this is the will of council, end up referring this back to staff to make those changes and bring back a bylaw for first and second reading again. But Ms. Williams, is that an appropriate path if we're going to go down that piece? Okay, so let's debate the motion that's here, and if we feel it has merit, then perhaps the right, let me change this motion to actually just refer it back for those changes. Councillor Appleton, back to you. Is there anything else you wish to add on those changes?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate your comments. I guess, and I too do not wish council to sort of be burdened with discussing the details. That's why I'm making specific reference to the language that's already been passed by council resolution. So I'm just referring back to that particular language. And as you mentioned, in terms of referring back to staff, I recognize and appreciate that staff have said that the language has been tweaked according to legal opinion. I guess I might, I guess I would seek to have that go back to staff for a little bit more detail on basically the details of that legal opinion and what was laid out therein. So I'm not taking issue with staff's wording in the amendment bylaw, but more just asking a question about how we arrived at that point through that legal opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Is there any other discussion on this, on the changes that is being proposed here by Councillor Appleton? Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you. I haven't decided which way I'm voting yet, but I did want to ask a question with respect to this. If we do nail down more specifically the definition of trap, I guess this question would eventually be through you, Chair, to staff, to allow cage and box traps, to allow nets, suitcase type live beaver traps, in addition to the common mouse and rat traps, which have already been enabled in the current wording. If we extend the definition to include these additional cage types, then it seems to me, and hopefully staff can confirm, that this would then allow Oak Bay residences to capture beavers in beaver traps, to capture raccoons in the box traps, and to capture any other small mammal in these extended definitions of traps as proposed by Councillor Appleton. Is that true?
So I think I'll go back to Councillor Appleton just to understand your intent, because at the end of the day, we'll probably give this to staff to word based on the intent. Is that the net effect that you're seeking to achieve here, Councillor Appleton?
Well, thank you, Your Worship, and a reasonable question. I guess part of the discussion around the subject may also potentially refer to the 1990 bylaw, trapping bylaw, referred to by Ms. Morden, that may contain more direction on this subject. I guess with the content of the existing animal control bylaw, it's not clear to me the capacity that a resident would have to trap nuisance wildlife on their property as they saw fit. And so there may be an interaction with that other bylaw. I want to achieve the goal, or I would seek, my goal would be to achieve the goal of discontinuing completely the use of those traps, leg hold traps, and those traps which have been clearly identified by the community as being inhumane, but allowing the use, not extending the prohibition on traps beyond what is currently provided for in the bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. I'm going to go back to Ms. Morden here, just so I'm struggling a little bit personally with the ramifications of what this looks like. I sort of got from her description that this refers to that, refers to the other parts, to kind of give a cascading impact of narrowing the scope. So Ms. Morden, listening to that wish, and not suggesting that it's the will of council at this point, but just at a broad scale of things, what is the nature, in your opinion, of how the is that a practical approach essentially of doing that? Is that just a changing of some of the language and those definitions within that structure that you've laid out?
Thank you, Your Worship. Certainly, we can revisit the language that was approved in the council resolution back in May. I think I would definitely agree with your suggestion to have it, if supported by council, referred back to staff. There are so many components that are really interrelated here. So I would really want to understand the impact and possibly go back to Ms. Winter to understand some of the background on it. And we could absolutely bring forward the 1990 bylaw having to do with trapping. I would just point out that through this amendment bylaw, we are proposing to repeal that 1990 bylaw. So it would no longer be on the books. This would replace it. So there would not be any sort of intersection between the two where there could be inconsistencies. But certainly we could bring that forward, back to council at a future date, along with revisions to the wording of the definition, and then have more time to consider what the implications are for other sections.
Okay, thank you. And again, I'm just seeking some clarification here. From my understanding, I apologize if other councillors understand this better than I. I'm not entirely clear on where the definition of humane fits in this. Is it sort of a catch-all if we haven't defined something that it's sort of automatically banned, or just the type of traps that could be allowed through permit would be restricted by if they were deemed to be inhumane? That's where that kicks in. It doesn't affect the traps that we've listed so far.
Currently, the way we've worded the proposed 19.3, that is where we've kind of layered on top this prohibition against the certain types of traps that the district would not allow to be used. Not sure if that answers your question.
No, it does actually. I think that
Okay.
does help. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take over from council's discussion on this. We have a motion right now. If I think what we might deal with is, if I'll take the will of the motion as laid out. If it passes, but we'll then take as a referral motion to refer the matter back to staff to incorporate those changes if that's the will of council. So let's just treat this as a topic of discussion as a whole, and then we can refer it to get that more fulsome piece. Go ahead, Councillor Ney. Councillor Ney, did you have your hand up?
Well, I didn't think I did, but I did have a thought just in response. I don't know, you're reading my my mind here, but my preference, given the comments from staff, and I appreciate what Councillor Appleton has brought up here, and I guess what I'd like to see is just this go back to staff for consideration. What I'm understanding from staff, this is complicated and things are intertwined, and it would make more sense. I think it's clear what the tenor of the discussion is going, though we haven't heard from everybody. But I do understand the distinction that's being made here, and so that would be my preference here, rather than make an effort to start tweaking this bylaw at the council table that may have other complications that we can't yet right now foresee.
Thank you, Councillor Ney. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you. I won't be supporting this motion to amend. Certainly, so much work has gone into this. We had a consultant, Ms. Winter, Joanna Winter, who put a great deal of time and thought into this. It's been before us for quite some time. It was designed to help address some serious issues in the community. And I think the work that has been done on this bylaw and on the amendments is really excellent work. I hate to see us start picking it apart or trying to change something that might have implications for all the rest of the bylaw. I think this is a really good piece of work. I looked at a number of communities when I was doing some of the background on this, as you know, and I think we've captured the best of a series of initiatives in other communities. So I will be supporting the original, the original report as presented. Thank you. And I appreciate Councillor Appleton's comments, but I would be worried that this may never get back to us in a reasonable amount of time. And I think there certainly was at the time, there was some urgency around this issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. On the motion to amend, Councillor Zelka, and then I'm probably going to call the question. There's no more hands. Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much. I also won't be supporting the suggested amendment with respect. It seems to me, especially with staff has pointed out, section 19.3, the override effectively, by my read, achieves the same objectives, outlawing any trap that captures an animal by the foot, leg, or neck, even steel trap ones. So I will be not supporting the amendment. Thank you. And moving forward, ideally with the bylaw as is.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. I don't see any other hands on this. I'm inclined not to support the amendment as it is either. I hear Councillor Appleton's concerns about not extending the restrictions too far, but I feel reasonably comfortable that we can, if this causes undue hardship, we'll certainly hear about it and can make any modifications to the wording as we need to, in a minor tweak at that point to include perhaps box traps, etc. So I'm reasonably comfortable with the work that's gone into this at a very careful lattice of wording to kind of get to where we want to be, and I'm hoping it works, and I'm reasonably trusting of the approach that's been taken so far. But I'm also very cognizant of the fact that we don't want to over bureaucratize this kind of piece and let people do reasonable work in their own yard. So, Councillor Zelka, you had your hand officially up there still. Did you wish to? Nope. Okay. Any other discussion before I call the question on the amendment? I don't see any. I'll call the question then. All those in favor of the amendment? And those opposed? I'll capture this myself, Councillor Zelka, Councillor Green, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Braithwaite, and Councillor Ney. So that motion to amend fails. So we're back to the first reading of the wording as it stands. Is there any other amendments or discussion at this point? Now I'll call the question then. All those in favor of first reading? And those opposed? Councillor Appleton opposed. Thank you. And we'll move to, can I get a motion for second reading? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Motion's live on the second reading's live. Is there any other discussion on this at this point? Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll vote against second reading, but I just wanted to record it that it's very unfortunate that I have to vote against this, because I do support Section 7 of the amending bylaw, specifically referring to restrictions for dogs on South Willows Beach. So I'd just like that recorded for the record, please.
Okay, thank you. If I may ask that we include that in the minutes, just so it's clear. I appreciate that, Councillor Appleton. And these are often difficult when there's things that you do and don't support in a single bylaw amendment. It can be tough. So I appreciate you making that clear for the public as well. We are sitting on second reading right now. I don't see any other discussion, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? Councillor Appleton opposed with the note as stated. And I just want to make sure I'm doing this correctly. We'll do third reading as well tonight. So if I can get third moved. And is there a second? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any other discussion on third reading? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Appleton opposed. Thank you for that. There was optional pieces on the directing staff to work with the Environment and Climate Change Canada on additional signage. Is that something we want to look at right now? Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would make the motion that the additional consideration to work with Environment Canada on the installation of additional signage be examined and brought back to Council.
Again, is that a seconding, Councillor Patterson? Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Morden?
I'm so sorry, Your Worship. I just wanted to confirm that the ticket information utilization bylaw was also given 3
Oh.
readings. I'm not sure.
It was not.
Okay.
So I will come back to that one, but we just have a motion right now
Thank
to
you.
do this piece. So thank you for that catch. Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion that's in front of us, which is to have staff speak to the federal government? I'm not seeing any, so all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you for that. And then yes, I'm going to do first and second reading together for the ticket information utilization bylaw. So if we can get first and second reading, and then we can have discussion. Moved and second. This is bylaw. Go ahead.
I'll move first and second reading of
Okay,
the
bylaw.
ticket information utilization bylaw 3952.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Amendment bylaw 4798. So first and second reading. Any discussion on, is a seconder for that? Yes, moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion, Councillor Appleton?
Just wanted to indicate I'll be voting against because it relates to the previous bylaw amendment, animal control bylaw. Thank you, Your Worship.
Nope, no, thank you for the clarification. I always ask if you're going to vote against something that you articulate why, so that the public understands the rationale for it. And perhaps members of council may listen to you and change their mind as well. So it's always worth doing. So moved and seconded. I don't see any further discussion. First and second reading. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. And then third reading of the same. Oh, sorry, Councillor Appleton opposed. My apologies. I glanced down at the wrong time. Councillor Appleton is opposed for first and second reading, and then third reading. If I can get a mover and seconder. Moved.
Yeah, move third
seconded.
reading. Yeah, go ahead.
We'll
Move third reading of bylaw number 3952, amendment bylaw number 4798.
Perfect. For third reading. Any other discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. And I understand Councillor Braithwaite. Oh, wait, sorry, Councillor Appleton opposed. And Councillor Zelka, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to confirm where and how did we repeal that 1990 bylaw?
It would come on adoption at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Councillor Braithwaite, I understand you have to leave us, unfortunately. Okay, so enjoy your evening, and we will see you back here again next week. And Councillor Braithwaite did let us know ahead of time that she had unfortunately a bit of a conflict, as this was moved from Monday to Tuesday to accommodate the election, federal election, that she would have to leave us a bit early. So there she goes. And we're on to item number 5.3, which is the license of occupation for the Girl Guides of Canada. I have here the Ms. Williams is you. So I'm going to mute myself because we're in the same room and we get echo. So I will mute myself, and Ms. Williams, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Murdoch. The Girl Guide License of Occupation report that's before you is here as the current agreement that's been in place for the past 5 years expires on October the 24th. In conversations with the Girl Guides, they've expressed a deep appreciation for the use of the facility and a desire to extend for another 5-year term. So the report outlines the relationship between the Girl Guides and the district. And as noted in the report, statutory notification is required anytime a municipality is considering disposing of a municipal asset. And while a license of occupation is not a final disposition the way we think of it, it is considered disposal for the purposes of the legislation. So should council support the staff recommendation that's in the report this evening, staff will undertake that necessary public notification. And if no negative response is received to that with your direction, we will arrange to execute the agreement. Of course, if there is any responses received, we would bring those responses and the agreement back to council for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams, and very clear. Is there any questions of Ms. Williams on this item? Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair, through you to staff. In the report, it makes reference to the future of the Scout Hall and Girl Guide Hall will form part of a future discussion about something to do with future Fire Hall Police Station. Is it possible that some outline could be provided, not only about the future Fire Hall Police Station, but also what's happening with the Scout Hall?
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Ms. Williams, anything to add on that? There essentially shared space down there by the fire hall. Go ahead.
Certainly, I wouldn't have any information, Your Worship, about what the plans are for the lands, but for the last number of years, it's something that councils have considered. And there is a feasibility assessment that will be undertaken within the next 2 years that will kind of lay the ground and give council some options for how to move forward there. The tenants, the Girl Guides, are aware of that potential outcome for that land, for the potential new fire hall, police services, civic center. And of course, they were aware of it the last time that they renewed for 5 years, and are still very willing to continue with this license of occupation relationship.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
So I appreciate the comments. Will a similar report be coming forward for relating to the Scout Hall, or is that a different arrangement?
I believe the Scout Hall has already been completed, if my memory serves me right, not long ago. The license of occupation.
Was it? Oh, I guess I missed that one. All right. So then the last question is, I guess within the last year, that the fire hall tower, the training tower, was taken down. I presume that was all part of this future fire hall police station work that's going to be moving forward in the next 2 years. Has that in any way impacted what the Girl Guides will be doing with the space?
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. I've got a head shake no in the room here, but maybe I'll just take a verbal answer so we all have it on the record. Go ahead, Ms.
Okay,
Williams.
thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Zelka. Yes, that's a totally different arrangement, and unfortunately, Chief Hughes is not here. He'd be able to provide more background on that for us, but no, it won't have any impact on the existing or future Girl Guide use. It will continue as it's been used in the past.
Great, thank you so much.
Mayor, you're on mute.
Oh, I apologize. I'm back and forth here in the room. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson, is what I was saying. I was waiting kindly for you to unmute yourself, but I hear it was me that had to do it. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yes, a couple of questions here. Is there a potential that having a 5-year lease will conflict with the planning or coordination of municipal assets that might arise from the 2023 assessment of municipal building assets? And also, have the plans to install a temporary building to house a fire truck been finalized? And when is that projected to be presented to council? And the last question, do we understand from the guides if they are forecasting any significant cost for repairs and maintenance to the building that warrant consideration of a 5-year lease that is more necessitated by the cost of those repairs rather than a desire for a 5-year lease?
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Ms. Williams, is there? Can I pass this back over to you, or would you like me to forward it to some other? I'll give it to you, and you can call in other members of staff if you see fit. Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, so the 3 questions there. The first one with respect to the term and would that create any challenges with future plans? The report was run through the department, the engineering department, and the director of engineering had no concerns with that. Historically, we have not had a termination clause in this agreement, and we put one in the last 5-year agreement, recognizing that there was potential other uses for that land, and acknowledging that 1 year's notice would be what was considered more than sufficient, given the length of time it often takes to get these projects through council, through a budget, and then into a shovel in the ground mode. So we felt that 1 year was still adequate, and it also allowed the Girl Guides that time to adjust for their programming, as they do a lot of long-term planning for their activities. With respect to the training facility, I'm going to leave that, and perhaps CAO Varela will have an answer for that one. And the last question with respect to forecasting repairs for the building, the Girl Guides are responsible for general routine maintenance and repairs. We are aware that the building does require some significant upgrades, not inconsistent with a lot of the buildings that the municipality owns. However, that one is not on a high priority to move it up the chain and get it repaired quicker. But should there be a critical failure of a piece there, certainly council would be faced with having to make a decision on how to fund that and work with the tenants. And the Director of Engineering is not on board, so I'm not able to pass off to him. But perhaps CAO Varela can assist us with the temporary facility for the fire department.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams and Ms. Varela. Do you have any updates for us on the temporary fire infrastructure?
Your worship, I don't at this time. It is actually out of scope for the matter before council at this time, and we will be bringing a third quarter update, and I'll make sure council gets the information at that time in the next few meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Varela. Councillor Patterson, anything else?
Yeah, no, then I take that to mean that there is no potential conflict with a temporary building for the fire truck and the location of that installation with these buildings. And also just for clarification, my final question about are the guides forecasting any significant cost for repairs and maintenance? And I realize that the district is responsible for certainly capital repairs, but I was just wondering if there was quite often the guides, if they have for their budget a substantial repair to be made that they're planning, that's a reason for them to also, want the 5-year lease, as say, opposed to a 3-year lease. Although I will go on to add that I do certainly support the recommendation of staff, and I am well aware of the great service that the Girl Guides play in this community, and also what a strong advantage that the guides in this location have to other locations where they don't have halls. I know from some of the previous history that we've heard that the volunteers for this hall, because they do in fact have a hall, is significantly higher in this location than it is on other areas. So I just wanted to understand what other implications there were for a 5-year lease that might cause council to perhaps wish a 3-year term instead of a 5-year term. Thank you for the answers.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson, for raising those. I don't see other hands for questions, so I'm happy to take a motion and then we can speak to the motion if someone so wishes.
I will move that we receive the report as recommended and that a notice of disposition to grant a license be published, and that should no negative responses be received to the notice of disposition, that the mayor and director of corporate services will be authorized to execute the agreement between the Girl Guides of Canada and the District of Oak Bay as attached to the report.
And moved and seconded. If there's debate, I'll probably separate these just because I like separating receive motions, but I think if there's no debate, I'm quite happy to move them forward as a group. They seem fairly straightforward. Any other comments or questions at this point? I'm not seeing any. I just, again, as always, appreciate the staff's work on these things, bringing them forward in such a clean way and cleaning up some of our processes as we go through these as well, as we don't always a lot of these agreements have been done without the same level of rigor in the past, and it's nice to see the details included. I don't see any other hands, so I'm ready to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Item number 5.4, Ms. Williams, welcome back for the similar license of occupation for Oak Bay Volunteer Services.
Thank you, Mayor Murdoch. This license of occupation, again, is for another very long-term tenant of the districts. The difference being that we've never had a formal agreement with the volunteer services, so we're really looking forward to getting this one in place. The volunteer services have been residing downstairs here at Municipal Hall for over 30 years and operating in the community for over 40. When the Municipal Hall renovation project was introduced, Council authorized an additional $86,000 to be used to construct a purpose-built office space for the Volunteer Services Society in an area of the Monterey Recreation Center that had been historically underutilized. So at that time, Council supported what staff had identified as a mutually beneficial nature of the relationship between the mandate for the society and the focus on programming and services for the older population at the Monterey Rec Center. So the purpose of this report, very similar to the last one, is to formalize that agreement and to give some surety and confidence to the society and to the district as to what that relationship is going to look like. And of course, if the staff recommendation is approved, we would follow that same notification process and either execute without any negative responses or bring it back to council should we receive those. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams, and for that overview. Are there questions of Ms. Williams on this item? If not, perhaps we'll just deal with the motion to receive the report first, and then we'll get to the motion to go moved and seconded for receipt. Any discussion on the receipt? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. And then perhaps a motion as laid out here. If I can get a mover and a seconder.
I'll move that notice of disposition to grant a license of occupation to the Oak Bay Volunteer Services for the granite room, et cetera, to the end of that paragraph. And further, that should no negative, and that it'll be published, and that further no negative responses to the notice of disposition be received by the district. The mayor and director of corporate services be authorized to execute the agreement between the Oak Bay Volunteer Services and the district of Oak Bay as attached. And I just would add to that we all, I think, recognize the significant role that the Oak Bay Volunteer Services play in this community. And it's wonderful that they will be having a new home here. And I would expect that it will be very advantageous to the municipal staff to have the extra space available in the lower level of municipal hall for spreading out some of the records that they're getting organized. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I saw a seconder in Councillor Green. So if there, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a general question. I'm not quite sure who to, but in some way similar to the previous one, with respect to future plans for this building. I know there's been general discussion about, for example, replacing the library next door and possible modifications to the building in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. Just wondering if staff could possibly give us a heads up as to what may or may not be planned for this building and what provisions have been put into the bylaw to allow us some flexibility, the agreement to allow us some flexibility should something have to be done with the building on a shorter term basis.
Sure. Thank you very much, Councillors. I'll go to Ms. Williams here to answer your question.
Thank you, Your Worship. With respect to the long-term plans for the facility, I can't respond to that, but I can share that we've incorporated a termination clause in this agreement, very similar to the other one, that would allow us that flexibility to move should plans for that facility change.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Councillor Zelka, anything else?
I guess I'll pull out the asset management reports and see if there's anything been mentioning about this report, about this building in terms of future plans. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Perhaps Ms. Williams or Ms. Varela, I'm trying to recall, to my best of my knowledge, there's we are anticipating, I think it's actually in this report, but I don't have it pulled up here. When is the facilities master plan expected to come? Because that's looking at a lot of these kind of questions as well. Anybody have that date handy?
Your Worship, staff are anticipating bringing that forward as a future step, and that can be discussed when Council considers the asset management report on September 27th. So that additional information and timing can be made available at that meeting. Thank you.
That makes sense. Thank you very much, Ms. Varela. Anything else, Councillor Zelka? Nope, we're good. Okay, any other discussion or comments? We have a motion live on the floor at this point. I'm not seeing any, so I'm ready to call the question. All of those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Item on to number 5.5 of the agenda. And I believe we have Mr. Anderson here to speak to a development permit application at 3475 Ripon Road, also known as the Yacht Club, Royal Victoria Yacht Club. Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Worship. I'll actually turn this over to Kevin Weber, our planner, who's authored the report. Thank you.
Very good. And welcome, Mr. Weber.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The District of Oak Bay is in receipt of a development permit application to permit the repaving of an existing parking lot and boat storage area, as well as the installation of new drainage, underground services, and landscaping at the Royal Victoria Yacht Club located at 3475 Ripon Road. Staff have reviewed the proposal in context with the relevant official community plan policies, the overall site design, and consider the proposal to be supportable and ready for council consideration. The 10,283 meter square property is located on the east side of Ripon Road between Beach Drive and the Strait of Juan de Fuca, and is bordered by Cabra Bay to the north and east and single family homes to the south and west. It has a P3 commercial recreational use zoning designation and a specialized commercial OCP designation. As some of you may recall, a development permit was issued to backfill and pave a portion of the foreshore to expand a boat storage area, as well as construct a new boat ramp on the subject property in 2018. This work was recently completed late last year. The current proposal is to repave an adjacent vehicle parking lot and boat storage area, as well as install new drainage, underground services, and landscaping. This will involve the removal of the existing paved asphalt surface over the boat storage and lower vehicle parking lot, grading and repair of the earth subsurface, installation of drainage pipes and filtered catch basins in the boat yard, stormwater management and new landscaping in and around the parking lots, installation of geogrid underneath the driveway, and the installation of underground conduit for future dock, wastewater pump, and yard lighting. As the subject property is located within an area designated as the Shorelines Development Permit Area within the district's official community plan, and the applicant is proposing works within 50 meters of the natural boundary, the proposal requires a development permit and review in conformance with the Shorelines Development Permit Area guidelines. Staff have reviewed the proposal in accordance with these guidelines and noted that the foreshore and backshore areas on the subject property presently exist in a highly unnatural state due to past development, and that the foreshore is almost entirely armored with rock riprap and has been backfilled and paved. This, of course, limits the potential negative impacts of the proposed works in the natural environment on land, as already in such a disturbed state. However, the applicant has provided a report from an environmental consultant, as well as a referral from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, which additionally assesses the proposal for potential impacts to the adjacent marine environment, and in particular fish and fish habitat. These reports indicate that the proposal will not likely result in negative impacts with proper mitigation measures in place, and additionally outlined a number of mitigation measures to be followed during construction. To ensure conformance with the development permit area guidelines, the applicant is proposing to plant a variety of native shrubs within new bioswales that are to be constructed in and around the vehicle parking area, which will serve to enhance these areas, which have historically been maintained as manicured grass. And this is also in line with our green shores, or with the green shores for shorelines development principles. No trees are proposed to be removed or the existing canopy coverage altered as part of the proposed works, and tree protection measures are to be put in place to protect existing on-site mature trees throughout construction, as per the recommendations of an arborist report submitted with the application. The application was reviewed at the September Advisory Planning Commission meeting, and the commission noted that the applicant's preferred September-October timing window under which works can be completed, confirmed that an environmental consultant would be on site to monitor construction activities, and that further exploration should be undertaken by the applicant to determine if there is a more environmentally friendly approach than asphalt paving to surface the parking area. The commission ultimately recommended to council that the application be approved as presented. Staff note that due to location of the proposed work within an environmentally sensitive area, it is recommended that conditions be placed on the development permit to ensure appropriate mitigation measures are put in place during construction to reduce the likelihood of negative impacts on the natural environment, as is shown on the attached draft development permit. The District of Oak Bay will additionally require a security deposit, the amount to be determined based on 2.5% of the value of proposed works, and this is to be held for the correction of any further damage to the environment should it occur. As the proposed works generally conform to the Shorelines Development Permit Area guidelines, and improvements are proposed to be made to drainage and natural vegetation on the subject property, in line with the Green Shores for Development design principles, staff consider the proposed development to be supportable. Staff are requesting council direction on the application, and the applicant and general manager of the Royal Victoria Yacht Club, Simon Guttrell, is in attendance today to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weber, and welcome, Mr. Guttrell. We will go to you with any questions if members of council have any. Perhaps we'll just go straight to questions at the beginning. Go ahead, Councillor Green. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you to Mr. Weber and his department for a very, very comprehensive report. Really appreciated, particularly comments on page 4 of 65, which refers to the paving component of the parking lot. And I appreciate the information there. And I'm just making these comments in sort of a question in general. I understood that at the APC meeting, as Mr. Weber referenced, there was a question about using alternate material for paving the parking lot, something more permeable than asphalt. And I just wondered if, and perhaps through you to Mr. Guttrell, if that had been explored. I understood that that suggestion was made at the APC meeting, and I just wondered if Mr. Guttrell could speak to that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Guttrell, or maybe I'll go to Mr. Weber first.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I believe Simon has actually prepared a response to this, so yeah, it may be best to follow up with him.
Great. Welcome, Mr. Guttrell, to our meeting. If you're here, you're muted at the moment, so we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. My apologies, Your Worship.
No worries.
Having problems with the mic. Yes, we looked at the road surface with the engineer at various options, including interlocking brick, grid systems, etc., to basically let the rainwater filter through. With the state of the parking lots right now, it's very soft underneath, so we're actually installing a geogrid to take away some of that cracking of the asphalt surface. And the engineer also said that using different surface will create runoff, which will go into the ocean, which won't be captured by our filters. So they recommended at this time, because there is no other alternative, to stick with the asphalt as proposed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guttrell, for answering that question. Councillor Green, you still had the, you're muted, Councillor Green.
I am so sorry. Mr. Guttrell, thank you very much for the answer. And I don't think I have any other questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I have Councillor Zelka, then Patterson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Appreciate it. A first comment or question will be, I guess, to staff. When I check the zoning bylaw and I look up P3, which of course is commercial recreation use, I noticed in section 11.3.4, subsection 2, says that a yacht club use is restricted to a lot area being no less than 10,800 square meters. This lot is actually smaller than that. I presume that puts the Royal Victoria Yacht Club as a legal non-conforming to the P3 zoning.
Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I don't have the bylaw open in front of me, but if the yacht club was created prior to that specific regulation being put in place, which I believe it was, it would become legal non-conforming with that regulation.
Thank you very much. And just to confirm, legal non-conforming means just for the specific items. It doesn't mean it's legal non-conforming to the entire zoning bylaw.
Mr. Weber.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So let me then jump into my questions. So I do notice, and thank you so much. This report is fantastic. I really appreciate you you pointing out the green shores aspects and other aspects that are being referenced. I think it's green shores. So I noticed at the bottom of page 4 and then top of page 5 of your report, it makes quite extensive reference to public access. that piqued my interest, since of course we're not supposed to be obstructing public access to the foreshore. However, this is commercial recreation use. Please help me understand, maybe either yourself or the proponent, which part of this lot can the public access and how can they access it?
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. I'm just going to note there's someone who's called in with the last 4 digits 9907 that's unmuted. We could have just hit *6, I think it is, to mute on the phone. Then that would eliminate the background noise that we're hearing, the chatter. So that's last 4 digits 9907. If you could just hit, I believe it's *6 to mute. Is that correct, Ms. Williams? Or I'm not sure. I think it's *9 or *6. One of those two does the muting.
*6.
All right. So sorry about that. Go ahead, Mr. Weber.
Yes, thank you, Worship. And again, I don't have these regulations in front of me, but I believe there's provincial legislation out there. And what it basically refers to is that, I guess, barriers or walls cannot be created along the foreshore to prevent people from accessing other areas of the foreshore. So not specifically that people should be allowed access over private property.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, in this case, you know, the foreshore area is already in such an altered state. And really, they're not going to be changing the current condition at all with respects to public access.
Excellent, thank you. Can you please remind me, what is the foreshore? Is this something to do with high water and low water mark or something? What is it, please?
Mr. Weber?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Yes, it'd be the area between the low water mark and the high water mark.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate you pointing that out. And one of these days, I plan on heading down there and seeing how far I can get without having to get anywhere near private property. And I certainly don't recommend anyone trespass. So a question then, I'm an engineer. What is a geogrid? And how will this harden the soft soil that's apparently underneath this parking lot?
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Mr. Weber, do you wish to answer that, or should I give it back to Mr. Cottrell?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I believe Simon should be able to best answer this question.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cottrell, welcome back. If you can just give us an understanding of what a geogrid is.
Thank you, Your Worship. A geogrid is a mesh type material that we're going to be putting above the subgrade below the asphalt, basically to help eliminate the cracking, which we're currently having in the driveway due to the soft soil underneath. Apparently, it's used a lot in soft roads. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead.
Excellent. Yes, thank you. So when you talk about hardening the soft soil, I presume the soil is soft because of its, I presume, water saturation fundamentally, or maybe the characteristics of the soil. If you could just confirm that the hardening aspect is really just to prevent the cracking, and maybe I'll find out later on how this gets hardened.
So do you want an answer for Mr. Cottrell on that, or just at this point?
No, I guess I don't. I'll find out that later. So the last question I have to do is having to do with grade. I was very looking throughout the entire report. I do see a lot of references to grades all over the place, but it wasn't clear to me whether, as part of this process, and also in light of climate change and potential sea level increase over the next 60 to 100 years potential, whether the grade was going to be modified or enhanced or changed, or if there could be some clarity as to what is being intended here and what's being approved, it would be helpful to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Mr. Weber, is there any changes to the grade of the land in the course of this work?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I believe there is some slight regrading that is going to be taking place on the property, and of course, the applicant would be able to speak better to that.
Sure, I'm happy to go to Mr. Cottrell again. Then, Mr. Cottrell, do you have maybe perhaps a brief summary of that regrading work that's being undertaken and why?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, the lower level of the parking lots is currently fill. So they will be putting new subsurface on top of the fill. And so it will be increasing slightly but over the current height. So.
Thank you very much. It would make sense, and most likely as part of the soft soil conditions and the cracking, that the soil has in some ways subsided. So finding a way to bring it back up maybe to a historical level makes perfect sense. So thank you very much for clarifying that. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to either staff or the applicant. I just wanted to once again thank Mr. Cottrell and the management of the Yacht Club for their ongoing commitment to environmental protection. They do have their 5 anchors rating, and so you know, I know that they've been involved in that program for a number of years, and so certainly I want to express my appreciation that having environmental concerns as part of your activities is really, it's a great leadership strategy. Looking at this report, I guess the problem is being caused by the underground water runoff, and what wasn't really evident to me, and this is my second review because I saw it at the APC, but it's a very comprehensive report, which again, I appreciate. But the thought occurred to me, if the problem is being caused by underground water runoff, has there been evidence of any change in the amount of the load of the underground runoff, or is this problem primarily attributed perhaps to an inadequate water management system that will be improved through the project? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I'm not sure who to give that question to. Probably Mr. Cottrell is probably more familiar with the nuances of the why some of these things. Mr. Cottrell, are you able to answer that question?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I can try. Basically, the parking lot was last paved just over 40 years ago. So we've found that due to the length of time, a lot of water has run underneath the cracked road surface. So we're hoping by undertaking this repaving project that we can address the subgrade as well as the surface, which should eliminate any further problems moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other hands up for questions, so perhaps we can get a motion on the table and we can have a discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Green. Just moving the motion, the recommendation. Why don't we take the motion to receive first? Is there a seconder for the motion to receive? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. So that's received. And then Councillor Green, do you want to move the main motion?
I'll move the main motion, and then I have just a couple of comments. Thank you.
Sounds good. Moved and seconded. So go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you again to Mr. Weber and to Mr. Cottrell for being here as well. And the only issue that I thought about, and it's not one that I will stop me from supporting this proposal, was the issue of paving. And I think about it now in the context of the heat dome that we suffered through in June, and have been doing a lot of reading since that time about the implications of paved surfaces in generating heat, especially in urban centers. And asphalt, of course, is black, so it is a huge generator of heat. And I just want us to be mindful that we may have to, in the context of climate change, which is now upon us, and weather extremes, such as the heat dome that occurred this summer, that we as a municipality may have to start really looking seriously at the issue of surfacing throughout our municipality, not just for our commercial partners and business partners, but for everything that we do in terms of repair and replacement of infrastructure. So that's my only comment. And I know this was discussed at the Advisory Planning Commission meeting, which I appreciated. And I also appreciate that Mr. Weber has identified it, raised it, and addressed it, as has Mr. Cottrell. So I thank them both for that. But I think all of us have to be now hugely aware of the implications of how we construct our communities around these issues of heat and urban centers and paving. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and somewhat picking up on the discussion introduced by Councillor Green, speaking in favor of the motion on the floor, and very much concur with her comments, and just want to underline my view that absolutely that less paving would be better, and that I would support consideration of amendments to the Shorelines Development Permit area to take these kinds of things into account. I think that's something that as a council we may need to cast our minds to in fairly short order. I think that there's a really significant mitigating factor on this site because of historical use and the amenity value for the community. And the reason I point that out is not just because I appreciate the services that the yacht club offers, but also because I guess I would issue it as a bit of a caution in terms of that other, I would think that council, I don't want to speak for council, but from my view, I would consider a different type of project potentially on a private property that contemplated hardening of the foreshore, considered expansion of paved areas of the foreshore would be a significantly different story. So this, I treat this as very much as a bit of a special case considering its value for the community. So I guess the measures and the approach taken here is I would consider fairly unique and not typical, but picking up on the comments from Councillor Green, climate change impacts are immediate and are here. The Shorelines DPA is something that council may wish to cast its mind to in terms of how those climate change impacts will manifest themselves in our community. So it gives us a good opportunity to talk about it in this regard. And I will commend and thank Mr. Cottrell and the Yacht Club for specifically pointing that out in their correspondence, reflecting that as times change and as facilities like theirs adapt to sort of the modern situation and the reality that we find ourselves in, that they need to adjust their operations. So I appreciated those comments very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Appleton. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any other discussion before we call the question? I'm not seeing any, so I'm ready to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you very much for that. And that is the conclusion of our official meeting here. So just need a motion to adjourn.
Move adjournment.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening. We will see you all next week, and enjoy the last day of summer we have here.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everyone.